risking a kingdom, defying the Pope, tearing apart centuries of tradition, all for love. Henry VIII was a king with absolute power, yet he became enslaved to a passion so dangerous it reshaped the destiny of England forever. At the heart of this story is Anne Boleyn, a woman who refused to be just another mistress, and in doing so became both queen and martyr. This is not just history, it is the story of desire, ambition, fear, and the devastating irony of forbidden love. By the late 1520s, Henry VIII had ruled England for nearly 2 decades. Outwardly, he was everything a Renaissance monarch was supposed to be: strong, educated, charming, the very embodiment of divine kingship. But behind the splendor lay a private torment. Henry's marriage to Catherine of Aragon had brought him no surviving male heir. For a king obsessed with legacy, this was not just disappointment, it was terror. Without a son, his Tudor dynasty could crumble. His greatest fear was not war, nor rebellion, but oblivion. Every passing year, Henry's anxiety deepened. He was not just a king, but a man haunted by the thought that he might be forgotten. And then came Anne. Anne Boleyn was unlike anyone Henry had ever encountered at court. Dark-haired, sharp-witted, elegant but unconventional. She had been educated in France, where she absorbed not just fashion and culture, but a sense of independence rare for women of her time. Anne was not the most traditionally beautiful woman at court, but she had something far more dangerous: magnetism. Her refusal to bow to Henry's advances made her irresistible. Where others had submitted, Anne resisted. She would not be his mistress. She would not give herself away cheaply. If Henry wanted her, he had to offer something no mistress had ever received: the crown itself. For Henry, Anne became more than desire. She was salvation. In her, he saw hope for a new beginning, a woman who might finally give him the son destiny required. For Anne, the choice was agonizing. To yield would mean ruin like her sister Mary, once Henry's mistress, later discarded. To resist meant risk. Yet ambition flickered within her heart. Did she love Henry? Perhaps, but she also loved what Henry promised: power, influence, the chance to shape history. It was not simply passion. It was a dangerous negotiation with fate. But Henry was still married to Catherine, and Catherine would not quietly step aside. For years, Henry pleaded with the Pope to annul his marriage. He argued it had been cursed from the beginning, since Catherine had once been his brother's wife. But Rome hesitated. Catherine was the aunt of the most powerful ruler in Europe, the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. To grant Henry's wish meant angering an empire. So Henry made a decision that would change the course of history. He defied the Pope. He tore England away from Rome. He declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England. And all of this centuries of religious unity shattered because of the passion between one man and one woman. In 1533, Henry secretly married Anne Boleyn. She was crowned Queen of England in a lavish ceremony, pregnant with what Henry believed would be the long-awaited son. But fate had other plans. That child was a girl, Elizabeth. Henry was disappointed but hopeful. Surely a son would follow. Anne, once untouchable and adored, now faced the crushing weight of expectation. Every miscarriage was not just personal tragedy, but political failure. The very crown that had elevated her became a chain around her neck. Anne's fiery spirit, once irresistible to Henry, now grated against him. She was opinionated, ambitious, unwilling to play the silent, submissive queen. At court, enemies circled like wolves. Catherine's supporters hated her. Nobles whispered that she had bewitched the king. And when Anne miscarried a son in 1536, Henry's passion turned cold. The man who had torn apart Christendom to be with her now saw her as a burden, a mistake. What happens when the fire that once bound two people together begins to burn them alive? Henry, desperate again for an heir, turned his eyes elsewhere to Jane Seymour. Anne once the center of his universe, became disposable. Charges were fabricated: adultery, incest, even treason. The accusations were outrageous, but Henry no longer cared about truth. He cared about freedom. In May 1536, Anne Boleyn, Queen of England, was led to the scaffold. She had once commanded a king's heart. Now she bowed her head to the executioner's sword. Her final words were graceful, almost forgiving. But the irony was brutal. The same man who had risked everything to possess her was the man who ordered her death. Anne Boleyn's story is one of history's greatest ironies. She failed to give Henry the son he craved. Yet her daughter, Elizabeth I, would become one of the greatest monarchs England had ever known. Henry's passion destroyed Anne, but her bloodline secured his dynasty for generations. Their affair was never just about love or lust. It was about the desperate human need to feel alive, to defy fear, to grasp at legacy, to risk everything for desire. History remembers Henry VIII as a tyrant, and Anne Boleyn as his doomed queen. But their story is more intimate than politics or war. It is a reminder that behind crowns and thrones were human beings driven by longing, ambition, and fear of mortality. Henry and Anne reached for each other, believing their love could conquer fate. Instead, it shattered kingdoms and cost them everything. In the end, their private passion reshaped the destiny of nations. And that is the devastating irony of forbidden love. From the ashes of Anne's demise, a new England rose. Henry, though remarried, was haunted by Anne's ghost. He built her tomb in Windsor, a monument to the queen he'd outlived. But the realm he'd reshaped because of her continued to reel from the storm of the break with Rome. Europe saw England's new monarch as a heretic king, and war loomed. Henry's health, always robust, began to fail. As the weight of his kingdom pressed down, he knew he'd made mistakes. Was it worth it? The man who dared to defy the Pope now grew old alone, his body broken from feasting and battle. The ghost of Anne, ever present, must have seemed like a mockery. How many hours did he spend staring at the four walls of his palace, remembering a time when life had been simpler, when love was the only law he followed? There are times in history when personal lives collide with destiny, shaping nations and leaving us breathless. Henry and Anne were such a couple. Their passionate dance changed the face of England forever. We marvel at how they defied convention, reshaped religion, and left behind a legacy that echoes through the ages. But perhaps their greatest story lies in the quiet moments. Stolen glances, secret vows, dreams shared in the darkness before dawn. It's a tale as old as time, the timeless echo of desire, ambition, fear, and the bittersweet ache of what could have been. As we stand witness to their legacy, let us also remember the quiet strength of a woman ahead of her time, and the haunting solitude of a king who conquered kingdoms but lost his soul to desire. And in the silence of their story, we hear the quietest whisper of all, a reminder that sometimes love's greatest tragedies are not its absence, but its overwhelming presence. When love consumes all, it can leave nothing but ashes in its wake. The brilliance of Anne Boleyn and the enduring enigma of Henry VIII. Let us reflect on what made them tick. Anne, with her sharp wit and thirst for knowledge, challenged the conventions of her time. A true Renaissance woman, she valued education and intellectual pursuits, proving that brains and beauty could coexist. Henry, on the other hand, was a product of his Tudor lineage, a king by birthright destined for greatness, or so he thought. Beneath his imposing exterior lay a complex man wrestling with his mortality and his place in history. What drove him to break with the church and risk his kingdom for love? These two souls, so different yet inexplicably drawn to each other, embarked on a journey that would redefine England forever. And so, dear viewers, we come to the end of this captivating journey through time. What did you think of Henry and Anne's story? Do you find yourself rooting for their star-crossed love, yearning for a different outcome, A world where passion didn't have to conquer all? Or perhaps you're lost in the complexities of history, pondering the choices that shaped nations. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember, your voice matters. Dive into our other videos and let the stories of history unfold before your eyes. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. And until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep chasing those historical mysteries. Who knows where your journey might lead you next?